approach your teaching with a classroom full of students who are on different levels, so that all students are moving forward?
Right. I think the first thing that I would need to do is just figure out exactly what is it that's holding that student back.
Okay.
So in the beginning of the year, I plan to administer a pretty comprehensive diagnostic assessment that will let me know just where every student is functioning coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Once I can identify who those students are who are functioning maybe below grade level, I want to pinpoint where are the gaps in their learning and what are they missing.
Yep.
Those are the things that I'm going to use to plan to fill in those gaps. I think a couple of the different things that I could do would be to set up a structure in my classroom where I'm able to see different groups of students so that I can change my instruction based on that group of students in front of me. So if I'm seeing those below grade level students, I'm going to use those things I saw in the diagnostic that they didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that I close that gap when I meet with those students. I think I could also do some other things like modify their homework, make sure their families know exactly what kind of catching up needs to happen and what I plan to do on my end, and some things that I think could maybe happen at home too.
I think that's a good plan. Thinking about, so we talked a little bit about how to prepare students for the ISAT.
Right.
I'd also be interested in talking a little bit about the Illinois state standards. Because actually one of the requirements we have at our school is making sure all lesson plans align to the Illinois state standards. And I am interested to hear how you would do that, but also how you would maintain a creative level in your lesson plans, because sometimes they are not the most exciting standards.
Yeah.
How would you approach that?
I think on a really high level, I need to make sure that I first off just cover all the standards in my school year and cover them before ISAT, like you were saying.
Yep.
So I'm going to check my long-term plan against the standards to just make sure, first of all, am I covering everything?
Mm-hmm.
I think my second step would be, am I covering it at the right level of rigor? So maybe I'm covering that standard, but I'm covering it a little bit too easy, or maybe even at an unreasonable level. So is the level of rigor correct? And then I think once I have that broad plan for the entire school year,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I will plan in units.
Okay.
And this is something that I know I'll learn a lot more about at Institute. And I've heard other core members mention developing some of their first unit plans.
Mm-hmm.
As far as that creativity aspect, like I said, I did notice when I was working with the Boys and Girls Club that I had to make things interesting. I had to make things engaging for the students.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm excited to draw upon is Teach for America has a website, which is just a bank full of all kinds of resources and lesson plans that I can draw on that other core members have made in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I plan to go there if I'm looking for ideas that align to the standard, but might also involve something such as project-based learning.
Okay.
That could really get my kids invested.
That's great. We've got about, let me see, we have about 6 minutes left. One of the things in our mission statement is that we are educating children so that they are lifelong readers. And literacy is a huge emphasis, K through 5 at my school. I'm interested to hear how you would incorporate balanced literacy into your teaching on a daily basis, and how you would contribute to that mission.
Sure. I think that's really actually one of the things that really excited me.
Okay.
In thinking about working at your school. I have a real passion for literacy. I understand there to be some real essential components to balanced literacy, those being a read aloud, students independently reading,
Mm-hmm.
doing some shared reading with students, having a writer's workshop component, and then also guided reading,
Yep.
which is where I was talking about working with those small groups and really being able to meet students at their individual levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to work to structure my day to fit all of those components in a really quality way. Something that I think is just so important is getting practice with authentic literature. So I would want to make sure that my day includes enough opportunities for students to practice their reading in any of those formats that I mentioned, whether I'm reading to them, they're
Mm-hmm.
reading independently, or we're doing shared reading together, but to really foster that love and that just natural habit of being a lifelong reader.
Great.
I think that's really exciting.
That's a great answer. Fantastic. The last question is more of a high-level question, and it's why elementary school? What draws you to teaching elementary school or young ones rather than high school or middle school?
Sure. When I think about some of the different kids that I've encountered, even in the Boys and Girls Club, I noticed that when kids don't learn to become great readers, and when they have gaps early on, it can become more and more difficult to really patch up those things that they're missing.
Okay.
And so I think elementary school just sets a really super strong foundation for future success. Another thing that's really important to me is the social and emotional learning in my classroom. You mentioned classroom management certainly being a challenge, and so I think at the elementary level, teaching kids how to work together and solve problems would be another thing that really excites me about working with elementary level kids.
Great. Let me see if I have time to sneak in one more. I can sneak in one more question, and then I'll open it to you. How do you plan to motivate difficult students who may disrupt the class at times, students who might have an IEP, students who are special education? How do you plan on supporting them as well as motivating them and pushing them forward?
I think to motivate them, I want to get to know them really well and let them know that I'm here to help, and that maybe even if they have a record of getting in trouble, they're not a bad student. I believe there's no bad students, but maybe they have a history of poor choices. So I want to get to know them, and then I also want to convey that I'm really on their side, and that I'm not an enemy, but someone who's going to help them reach their learning goals. I think in terms of motivating them, I've seen a lot of really cool systems where the student can have an individual behavior chart based on some very specific things that they need to improve, and then they can work to earn maybe some exciting things like lunch with me, for example, or extra computer time if they can improve those things. So I want to keep track of it with the student. I notice that when it's tangible for them, and they know exactly what they're working towards, and they know that I'm on their side, I believe that everyone can get there.
That's great. Sounds like you're a great teacher. Or you could be a great teacher. We'll see. So we have about 3 minutes. I'd actually like to open it up to you. I'm sure you have some questions about my school. Or if there's anything you didn't get to touch on that you wanted to touch on about yourself or your experience or what you think you could bring to Dixon Elementary, this is the time.
Well, like I said, one of the reasons I'm really interested in Dixon Elementary is that vision of literacy that you mentioned. I guess I'm a little curious, though, also to know what really is a vision of your school.
Good. Well, like I said, one of the first components is obviously having students that can read, because as you mentioned earlier, a student that can read is a lifelong learner. Reading is actually, I believe, fundamental in success in our current society. Another huge aspect of our school is just the idea of creating kids who are curious learners. We have a lot of hands-on projects that our teachers assign. We have a lot of research projects that we assign at an early age. And we really like our students to push themselves to think outside of the box. I think that's something really kind of different about our school, is that we really try to push our students higher thinking skills, higher levels thinking skills, with those types of projects to make them think well beyond what they're used to. The last thing is that we actually have a pretty large technological aspect coming out of our school, where we do try to incorporate a lot of computer time. We teach our kids how to use the word processor, Microsoft Word. We teach them how to use Excel. We have a technology teacher, so that's very exciting. Actually, that would lead me to a question. How would you plan to incorporate technology in your classroom?
I do think that that's really important. I know that students are going to have to use technology for the rest of their lives. So I plan to use it both when I'm to deliver my instruction. So if I can deliver that through a PowerPoint presentation, or maybe an Elmo projector, or whatever I might have access to as far as the presentation, I think that would help with engagement. But then secondly, I want them to be able to demonstrate their mastery using technology as well. So you mentioned word processing. Maybe they can publish some of their writing by typing it out. I think there's also some really amazing things that I've seen in classrooms as far as learning devices that students could use in centers, like a LeapPad or a Teacher Me. I think those things are really great too.
Great. Any other questions you have?
No.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time. It was
Yeah,
very
thank
nice
you so
talking
much.
with you.
Your school sounds like an amazing place.
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, I will let you know. I will talk to you soon.
Okay, great. It was
Great.
a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Liz.